All right, it's 3:30. I guess we go ahead and call the meeting to order. We're going to bring the Finance Committee meeting Tuesday, January 15th, 2019, 3:30, main conference room, County Administrative Building, 1 Center Street, Chatham, Virginia. Could we have the roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Scares?
Here.
Dr. Miller?
Here.
He's here. Mr. Farmer?
Here.
Mr. Warren?
Present.
And I will also note that we have Mr. Blackstock in attendance.
Do we have any items to be added to the agenda? I think you have to know. All right, what's the board, the committee's pleasure approving the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Aye. It's unanimous. Okay, let's go on to new business. Who will be taking
that
this?
is me. I
Okay.
think I have all of them.
All right.
So I have a presentation, but I've given you all copies of that presentation. The first slide that you'll see, we're going to talk about your budget calendar for the upcoming budget season. We've already embarked upon that. We started back in November, and we asked all of our departments to update their capital improvement plan. We do use this as a management tool so that we know what's coming. And all of those have been turned in. They've been compiled. I am still waiting on putting the animal shelters capital improvements into that plan, as well as the schools. And they've told me they just started their budget meeting, so I should be getting information from them. Department requests were due on December the 28th, and so I have them all, or at least I'm pretty sure I have them all. I know I have all of the ones that reside in the general fund at least, and I have been through 90% of those. And so I kind of put those on the back burner to kind of work on our presentation for today, which does include a review of revenues and a discussion of this calendar, which you'll see on January the 15th. Our meetings have already been scheduled with our department heads and our constitutional officers on the week of January the 28th, and that is for myself and the budget analyst and also Mr. Smoothman to go through those budgets with the department heads to see what truly is a need, to see what we can eliminate, to see what exactly needs to be contained in our 2020 budget. So right now, the target date for submission of the county administrator's recommended budget is March the 4th. And we will be advertising that. It would actually go to the board for approval of advertisement on March the 7th. There would be a finance committee meeting that day. So unless you all would like another finance committee meeting between now and March the 7th, there's not one currently scheduled, but we can certainly call one at any time. This is just kind of an outline for us to go through. And that's also a time that you all might want to meet with your constitutional officers to see what their needs are for the budget that have been included in the county administrator's recommended budget. So on March the 13th, we would advertise that budget. And of course, that's all dependent on when you all set that. And then our public hearing would be March the 28th, which is a special meeting. That's a Thursday night at 7 p.m. And both your school budget would be advertised and your county budget. For members that are just new, maybe last year was your first budget that you ever went through, this schedule is a little bit different because it's a non-reassessment year. So during a reassessment year, you actually have to advertise your budget if you have a tax increase attached to it for a whole month. This is just a 2-week turnaround. So that's why it's a little bit different and gives us a little bit more time. So once you have held your public hearing, it's unlike most public hearings that you have at your board meetings. You do have to wait 7 days before you can officially vote on those budgets. So the target date for approval would be April the 4th for both the school budget and the full county budget. Your school budget has to be approved by May 1. They have to have a budget by May 1. So that is basically your time frame. Technically, you could wait later on the county budget, but the reason that you cannot, and it's really not anywhere in writing, but because we're on a twice-a-year billing, we have to get done in April so that the Commissioner's Office and the Treasurer's what they need out to the citizens before that due date of June the 20th. Now we've moved our due date. Any questions on the budget calendar? And this will be approved by the full board tonight if you are okay with these dates. We are planning, we being Mr. Smitherman and myself, are planning the budget meetings in the communities this year. We would be limiting those to the 4 high schools, and they would probably be sometime during the month of March before we have our public hearing, so that people can, you know, voice their opinions and that kind of thing.
Mr. Chairman, I only have maybe a suggestion for the committee. I certainly, from my standpoint, would like to see us have some kind of meeting scheduled for the Finance Committee sometime in February after staff has met with constitutional officers and all the departments to get the information and be privy to that information. So, I mean, I just prefer to do that before I come in on the 7th. Try to make a real quick decision.
Maybe the 15th before your regularly scheduled meeting.
I just, personally think it's ridiculous.
Is it? Oh, is it? February the 22nd? It's February, March, the 30th.
It's the only question I have. You said the school board has not submitted the capital improvement?
No, I have not gotten a revised copy of their CIP. We have a CIP for them, and I have included that, but I also sent them what they sent us last year to see if any changes needed to be made, and I have not heard back from them. And I've sent, you know, a couple of things back to them, but I know they just started their budget meetings. And from what I understand, it was a lot of capital discussion during their meeting. So I feel like that's why they haven't given me anything yet, because they want it to be more accurate instead of sending the same thing.
I know the paper was listing $2.5 million in emergency repairs or something to that effect. So I'm just wondering how that will affect us.
Well, I'll give you a little briefing as we get closer to the end of our discussion when we're talking about budgets and stuff.
Mr. Chairman, I think, I agree with Mr. Warren. I think because of the way we've changed the way we do the budget, with the executive committee basically drafting the budget now, last year, the board did not get enough time to look at the budget in detail and then discuss with the constitutional officers and other people within the county government the effects of the budget. So I think it's imperative that we meet ahead of time, and at that meeting, we discuss, and the executive committee and Mr. Smitherman be ready to discuss any positions that are cut by title of the position, any raises in that budget above what is given across the board to any position, and any additional positions that are in the budget to include part-time positions to be discussed by the full board. In either way, because by the code, and Dave, you correct me if I'm wrong, but by the code of Virginia, the board is directly responsible for the budget of the county. And I want to be able to answer those questions from government employees as well as citizens.
But you all are not interested at this meeting. It'd just be a time for you all to discuss. And then at the March 7th meeting, you could let us know at the 19th meeting. Well, we'd really like to talk to Sheriff Taylor or, you know, certain individuals.
Well, I think we could discuss it at that point, as to how much time. Because you get up against deadlines, and that's when we start pushing things through that we don't know what's going on. And the full board needs to know what's going on in detail before we vote on the budget improvement.
Do we want to set that meeting at 3:30 like this one? Is that a good time? Would that give you ample time?
I was wondering if it needed to be 3. I don't want to be rushed.
I don't want to be rushed on.
So 3 o'clock? I'll add it tonight when I make my presentation, if that's all right with the finance committee.
I'm open at any time, so you guys decide.
And you'll also have a meeting request with the school board. I don't know if you want to have that a different day, but if that's coming up. We need to do that in February also.
And we could discuss that now since we're talking about calendar, if we want to go on and talk about the date that you all would like. I know it's further on down on our list, but.
I'd rather meet with them separate, because I don't want that 90 minutes taken up on just one item.
Let's look at those dates.
I'm on it, I don't know, who else is on that committee, and this will change, I know I'm on the school board liaison, who else is on it?
Dr. Miller,
I would prefer to be the same day, so we don't keep running back and forth to Chatham.
Well, can we do it at an earlier time
Yeah.
than 3?
Yes. I'm open for that. Mr. Barber, though, I yield to Mr. Barber, because he runs the water, and, I don't know.
I'll let the 1:30 here.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to take.
Get to be the hunt ahead of cattle and work at 1:30 and get ready and get over here, that was moving.
But I'd rather do it all at one time, I guess. So I can be here earlier.
Then if you're doing it on a board meeting day, just bear in mind, if you come at 2 o'clock, you might be here till 10 o'clock at night. It's just a long day for you. But I'm willing to do whatever you want. I'll be here anyway.
That's fine with me.
So 2 o'clock?
Are you okay with that?
I mean, Blue's playing.
Dr. Miller?
Yeah, I'm fighting this away.
What day was it looking at again?
The 19th, the day of the regular meeting, but it would be at 2 o'clock with the school board, and then the night, it'd be at 3 o'clock for the finance committee.
I'm just wondering, would they have any conflicts? I don't know their school board in and out.
I don't either, and I don't know who serves, and I guess it would be the full board. That's who came last time, every board member came. I guess we could
I'll
let.
text Dr. Jones right now, see what he says about that.
All right, we'll see what we find out there. Moving down the list, we're on review of revenues, and the next slide that you have there is just your major revenues that I've been through. Want to see how close we are to budget, and just so you know, what is playing a part in this year's revenues is the fact that we moved our due date till December the 20th, so they're still working December. I think by now, are y'all done now?
Okay.
So they just finished recently. So these figures were just what we collected through the end of December. So all of them, because we're 50% complete through the year, should be around the 50% mark. The only one that I would still be concerned about a tad would be personal property, which is at 33%. But as you can see from the next slide, if you'll look at that, this is the 5-year trend of percent to budget comparison. So if you look at personal property, it is a little on the low side. It usually runs around the 40, 41 percentile. Sometimes it's a little bit higher. So if that's the case, we may have received, more of that in January. But in January, of course, by the end of January, we'll have better figures that we can look at. So I'm saying right now that we're close to on target as far as our budget's concerned, but I'll know more after I get those figures in. When I do this comparison, what I like to do too is to look just on a preliminary basis of how are we looking for next year, for 2020. How are those revenues looking? Real estate is about the only category that I have somewhat concrete data. And what we do this year is we take our assessment from last year and we add to that any new construction, taxable construction, and then we look at our land use applications for the year and make any adjustments that need to come off. So in this particular instance, I took the building permits from the end of December, which are roughly $36 million in new construction. So we can add that figure. And then I got with Shirley Hammock to find out how many new farm use applications do we have so far. Now, the deadline's not till February, so that can change. Right now, we're looking at about $25 million more in new applications on top of the $566 million that has to be deferred, taken away. So I've estimated roughly $30 million, because you're still going to get some in before February. So really, $6 million on top of $4 billion in assessment is not going to warrant you a lot of revenue. So really, what I'm guesstimating in real estate is there's relatively no growth that you can expect there. And right now, we don't really have information on your personal property, machinery and tools, merchants capital. A lot of those things, those deadlines are a little bit further out. The DMV is who we get information from for our personal property, so we know what cars that we have located in the county, and that hadn't even been downloaded yet. So for me to guesstimate at this point would not be very accurate. Our solid waste household fee revenue, I know that you all are interested in that figure. It's still kind of up in the air just because we've given citizens until June to be able to pay that without penalty. But so far, I think we've done fairly well. We've levied a total of $3.5 million. We're hopeful to collect 90% of that figure, which would take us to 3.2 roughly. Right now, we know that there are 800 parcels that have to be abated, or 500 of which already have been abated. So that would take that total down to roughly 3.1. We budgeted just under $3.1 million. So I looked at December 31st to see, okay, how much revenue have we gained at the end of December? And this is revenue less any refunds we had to give back. So we received a total of $1,951,000, which is roughly 63% of the budgeted amount, which is not too bad. We had Vincent, Mr. Smitherman had Vincent run figures for what's still on the books to be collected, and it's roughly $841,000. So you can guess we're going to get about 500 of that. I also ran figures to see how much have we collected in this first 2 weeks of January. So we're roughly at 2.3. So we're going to be right around the $3 million mark, which is what we budgeted. So if we can get that, that's great, because that was shooting in the dark. But that's not to say that more things couldn't change between now and June, but that's just what it's looking like right now. But you just have to remember that we are giving the citizens till June to pay that $120. But without penalty, they must pay the $120 plus the first billing of $19. So they have to pay $180 before the end of June, not to be penalized at all. Because the way that works is if they say, well, I'm never going to pay that $120, and they pay the $60 in June, by code, Vincent has to put that $60 back to the oldest that's due. So then they'd be penalized on their June. So if you have citizens that may say that that's what they want to do, please dissuade them from doing that, because they will see a penalty, and then they'll be upset that they got penalized. Because I don't think they may not understand that. Do you have anything else to elaborate on that thing? That was good? Okay. Then I figured while we were on that topic, we would talk about our unassigned fund balance. This is the slide that I always put in there about what is unassigned fund balance, and that's the residual classification of the government's general fund, and includes all spendable amounts not contained in other classifications. And I've just run another scenario of what our financial management policy says that we should have on hand in order to be solvent. And these are figures that are run at June 30. I mean, you could run them at any other time, but that's when all the dust settles, all of your expenses have been taken out. And so what you have to do is you have to take the last 3 years of your general fund expenditures, and you have to get an average of those and take 20% of it. So in doing that, our balance that we should have on hand is $15.5 million. That did include, for one of those year's landfill expenditures in your general fund. I took those out. If you took your landfill out, because now they operate on their own, it would be roughly 5.1. So it does bring that down just a tad, but we are over $15 million right now that we need to keep on hand. And this is just a graph chart to show you those balances, and these are audited figures with our schools assigned. So we've just been assigning for the last 2 years full, but I went back all the way to 14 to show you what it would look like had we been assigning schools all along. And so 2018, as our audit showed us, was 18.8 million. And of course, that requirement at the end of the year was 14.2. But then once we add 18 in there, our new amount for the coming year, or the year that we're currently in, will be 15.1 if you adjust that landfill. Do you all have any questions about revenues or anything like that?
What you're saying is that 18 and 11 is unassigned.
Correct.
And we, based on the internal policy that this board created, we have to have 15 too.
Well, correct. Thereabouts, yep. And I'm thinking that this year, I haven't done an extensive amount of work, but based on what's happened this year, I think we can probably expect for it to hover at that $18 million figure. If we can do that, I think we will be in good shape. I don't look for it to be increased by a great amount, just because we've had a lot of unexpected expenditures that weren't anticipated when we went through budget last year. So I think it's probably going to stay around the same figure.
Okay. The 18, is that what, you asked me, is that what we actually got?
That $18 million at the end of the year, that's how much was considered unassigned, that wasn't tagged.
Was
in
any
the
of that,
total.
what we run into with Vincent, money that had come in earlier, or is that the actual number?
That's the actual number. That actually is money. It does include money for your new budget. So it's money, tax money that came in June is included in that.
Which we had $19.5 million come in June, and we had 18.8 on June 30. So technically, we don't have a lot of play right there. We don't have any play.
So the money that came in June that goes to support your budget for next year is part of this 18, and he's saying that we got 19.
That's what I was asking, so that we don't actually have 18 million, that's next year's money.
Correct.
Well, this year's money.
Correct.
That's what, this year, in the past, that was this year.
Correct.
So am I getting that right? 1 million, 2 million? Is the
Not even
actual-
that.
Not even that.
You would, if we were to take this and assign it, because we had had that discussion before, assigning your tax money, so you know this is not money you can play with. If you were to have done that last year, we would have had a negative assigned.
Well, what's it
balance.
actually supposed to be, like 8 million, 9 million, 10 million we're supposed to have?
Supposed to be 15.
15 million.
So it should be, if we were where we wanted to be and we used Vincent's shoebox analogy, we'd have $34 million if we wanted, and that's what we want to be able to do one day, but we can't. We can't put anything in the shoebox right now because we need it for operations.
But the county historically has always used these figures.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So it's not like it's happened, this is something that's new. This, basically, is a cash flow issue. What
Right.
happens is, the citizens pay their tax bill, it's due June the 5th, I think. And so when that money comes in, that's the money that we're seeing up there that's for the 18. It's
Right.
actually, you collected did you say you collected 19?
Mhm.
After, so the money comes in, and the county's always figured it like that. This is not something brand new. It's a point that Mr. Smotherman has made, and I think it's a good point for the board to be aware of, but we're not gonna change the date that we collect taxes.
As long as we never change that date,
It
we will
won't
make it.
matter, will it?
We will make it.
Yeah, as long as we don't change the date, we won't make it.
I think it was changed in 11?
07.
07.
It's been a while.
Well, I
This
do
is the
think
new report. Is that what you're
Yeah,
looking at?
yeah, I think we need to,
Yeah, if you
you know,
look at.
we got public hearing on, I mean, you need to understand that the balance on
Right.
hand at the end of December, total, her, Mr. Shorter, who's got good computers and calculators, is $30,523,123.
Now, on the second page, it does show you your general fund. Of that, your general fund is 15.9.
Right.
I compared that with December of 17. It was at 17 last year, but we pulled landfill out. You know, there's things that have happened.
It's not apples to apples.
Right. So landfill is sitting at 1.5, 500 of which is bond money, so I would kind of throw that out. So that should be closer to your $17 million figure. It should be about $1 million more if you put the landfill in or you try to take the landfill
But
out.
if you go put the collections in that through January 2nd for the solid waste fee, you're looking at $2.3 million, which would actually put these numbers larger on this ballot, on this report.
Right.
I think
Yeah, and it's a little bit, it's just because you've got different due dates, it's a lot of
It's a lot of moving
things.
parts.
You just can't look at this number and compare it to last year. I mean, I've put lots of
Mr.
things.
Short has.
Just to help you wrap your head around the difference between last year and this year. Last year, the December due date was the 5th, December 5th. We get most of the payments mailed in or submitted electronically right at or around the due date. So that week after is when we have the most amount of payments processed. Last December, we finished processing everything that was sent in current on or before the due date the second week of December. We were completely done processing payments before we went over Christmas. This year, the due date was on the 20th. The 21st was the county Christmas party. Then we went into Christmas break. We had mail backed up at the post office when we come back. Well, when we come back, we worked another short week because we had 2 days off for the New Year. So the vast majority of December payments were posted in January, which are not included in Kim's numbers. We only had a couple working days between the 2
Which
days.
appears it was somewhere around $2 million,
Right.
based on the number you gave.
Well, that brings us up to 2.3. It's
Right.
not an additional.
No,
Yeah.
But that's in that one category. We're
That's
talking in
just one.
every
Yeah.
category.
Just the one,
Yeah,
exactly.
So if we do them all,
It's
It's
gonna
a
be
lot of
much
money.
better.
it's a lot of money, and that's,
And I had toyed with the idea of giving you the information as up to today, and I could have done that. But then I was like, then you've got a partial month, and then if we go back, it's kind of shady how we kind of did that.
Well-
So that's why I didn't give you anything that we got in January.
the bottom line, I think we all understand it now, is we got a tight budget, we gotta continue to be good and conservative with our budget, but it's not, we're not
going backwards.
We're not going backwards, and we're not about to lose our bond rating or anything.
Right.
So, I mean, I think all of those things are important, because you can pick that one number and one date and make it seem really bad, and it's you know, it deserves us to be careful and cautious, but it's not a terrible situation.
The sky's not falling, we need to
Exactly.
be frugal.
Exactly.
But in layman's terms, we had to do a $5 million bond to do things last year because we didn't have the general fund balance. I mean, that's the way I see it. I mean, this number can do anything, but that was the reality that we live in. Why is that? Because we didn't have the, is that correct? We didn't have the
We
money?
didn't have the dry powder.
I mean, I think the public don't understand some of the things we're doing. It's pretty bad, or we wouldn't have to borrow $5 million. Tim's world, that's the way I see it.
I think it's fair to say we have stabilized our financial situation.
Right.
We're on the flat. We need to start coming back up, and we don't have sufficient reserves to pay for unanticipated problems. That's why we had to borrow money. They were all unanticipated.
big problems that we need to address right now, and we just don't have dry powder. Because 100% of the money we see on this chart goes to operations every year. It's operation. And as we go forward, and we've talked about this in the past, it's just starting to set aside a couple $100,000 at a time for unknown capital expenses. And it would be in a fund that we can't touch there for the problems we incurred last year. And that's what we're going to strive to do. It's going to take us several years to do that. But we're headed in the right direction.
But I think that's certainly the point I'm trying to make. I think the one Mr. Blackstone's trying to make is we are trying to add to our position, and certainly with the solid waste fee and the numbers that Mr. Short has brought in today, it does appear we're going to be able to prepare ourselves and be in a better position when it's time to open sales and do other things. And that burden that was coming out of general funds is now in the enterprise funds, so all of those unexpected expenses can be paid in a different manner. For landfill.
For landfill, correct.
Any other questions before we move on?
Just one point.
Okay.
When we borrowed $5 million more, as Mr. Baldwin mentioned, it pushes up that debt service. And the county has there is a ceiling as to the amount of debt service that we can have. And we are already meeting we already have a committee set up discussing the building of a new courthouse and possibly a new jail, a new scenario, which could be some of the preliminary figures we've looked at, well over $100 million. That's a lot of debt service. So we've got to be very careful about adding to our debt service instead of, we've greatly reduced our debt over the past 5 years. That's not correct. We really paid down a lot of debt, which is a good thing. We don't want to start balancing the budget by running back and forth and borrowing money, $5 million, $10 million to balance the budget. We've got to get tight with money.
Any more questions? We're going to move on to the animal shelter budget. And I know this is kind of squished up, but you will have it in your board packet too as a much better looking report than this one that's showing on the screen. Mr. McLaughlin has graciously sat down and put together this budget, and what he is anticipating spending in the next 6 months is just shy of $500,000. I want to point out that a lot of this is monies that are for salaries. We did not have to cover staff when Lynchburg was here, so a great portion of this money is for salaries and for the fringes that go along with that. The items that you see that are highlighted in yellow were items that we were already paying for when Lynchburg was there. So we were already paying for pest control, for the utility bill, for water and sewer, and for the fire insurance. The other items were covered by Lynchburg in the amount that we were paying them, which, if you will remember, from July 1 until December, we paid them $250,000. Last year, we paid $260,000 for 12 months. So we did have a little bit of that money left that we could transfer over, and all of the items highlighted in yellow will come from the old animal services budget. So I am anticipating that I'll have roughly $74,300 to take from that budget, which will leave an amount that we need to take from somewhere else of $418,229. Luckily for us, our CSA program has been wonderful this year. They have really tightened down on expenditures. So we do have that local money that we can transfer over from unspent funds in that category. So it won't come from your unassigned fund balance, which is a great thing that we could find it somewhere that already existed in the budget. But we're looking at about $700,000 savings in the CSA program in local. money, which is, can greatly be attributed to Richard and his leadership on the CPMT board, and Cheryl Boswell has really done a great job at trying to limit those costs, and they've changed some of their policies and how long kids can stay in the program if they're not seeing any kind of progress. They're, instead of letting them stay in with no progress, they're just letting them go.
I'm on the committee, I'll wait till the meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Black. I have a couple of questions about that, Ken.
Okay.
In the last 6 months of this budget cycle, we had $250 in the first 6 months for Lynchburg. Did we not have that $250 at all? Nowhere?
No.
We didn't anticipate we were going to have something?
If you'll remember, when we passed this budget in April, we thought Lynchburg's going to stay here another year. So the only thing we had to pay Lynchburg was an additional 3%. So it went from 260 to like 267, whatever that figure was. But that was for the whole 2019 year.
Okay.
Well, fast forward to May, and we got notice they were leaving, and then they said, well, we'll stay if you'll pay us $250
For 6 months.
Plus
for
6
6
months.
months. So I have like 17.6 left of what was budgeted for Lynchburg.
Plus
So that's
these
what
other
kinda-
items we were already paying.
Well, we were already paying. Yes.
So the fact of the matter is, this budget, proposed budget is for 6 months, almost $500,000.
Be $1 million.
So it'd be $1 million a year for the county to run the animal shelter. When Lynchburg was here, we had people that were hammering county administration and the board of supervisors about Lynchburg handling, not Lynchburg Humane Society, a nonprofit. And we had budgeted or spent for an entire year somewhere around $520,000 or $30,000. Is that right? Well, that's what I'm asking. What do we end up spending? What do we end up spending to operate the animal shelter?
What the number is, I have it in second.
You do?
What's the
It's
number?
035.
It shouldn't have been the 250 for the 6 plus the 250 for the back half. Plus to have
It was only
No, it was 260 is all we paid them last year, plus
But then the
electricity
addition-
and all that stuff.
03 what?
035.
I guess what I'm asking for the most recent 12 months, how much did we totally pay Lynchburg plus those utilities that we were already paying three lines?
I would say probably $290 is all we spent
For 12 months.
for 12 months, the first 12 months. And then they said, wait a minute, that's not cutting it. Because, I mean, the reason why they asked us for more money is that they couldn't run it on that. They
Okay,
were really
so the
running in
second,
the red.
so they run it 18 months. The last 6 months, how much did we pay them?
We, 250, and then half of these items here, well, you could add these up, because that's just 6 months right there.
So 250 plus what we paid and the other that we paid directly, what were those line items?
Roughly.
I don't know how to find anything in this income statement.
He's going the wrong way. This way. No, wrong way. There you go. It looks like, all right, let me backtrack. So if we add these items together, which is 3, 8, is 11, 36, roughly $36,000. So you've got, yeah, 35,775 for those items. That's for 6 months. So 72, I would say 72,000 is what we paid for last year, because I forgot this is like 12 months. I mean, 6 months, not whatever.
Okay. So take your 6 months that we paid, what I'm saying is take your 6, that's what I want people to hear this, because it's important.
We
Take your
paid
6 months.
260 plus 70, with 350,
For how many months?
12 months.
I-
And then-
And we getting ready to pay $1 million.
Someone's paying the other 650.
Yeah.
Well, just on top,
Last 6
it's
months
cost,
you paid almost half.
it's costing us an extra $1
I just did the math off the top of my head right there. There's $48,000 in retirement and health insurance expenses that LHS wasn't paying.
But we have to pay
We're
it.
paying.
That's what I'm saying. I guess what I want to know, I want the public to understand how much money we were saving by going to a nonprofit, which was,
Oh,
if we paid the 6 months, we paid them $250,000, right? Double that, that's $500,000, plus the utilities that we are,
$50,000 a year.
So $550.
Yeah.
If you doubled the last.
Then ancillary things, just say 600 to be fair. No more than 600.
And now we've got a budget of almost $1 million.
So we saved it easily.
$400,000.
Oh, yeah.
Over $400,000 by letting Lynchburg Humane Society, not Lynchburg, but Lynchburg Humane Society run that animal shelter.
Cost us twice what it cost.
Yeah, it's costing us twice now what we originally had it set up to be. What we budgeted, what we had.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. What are we gonna do about that?
Well, I'm sorry.
I think we need to regionalize the doggone animal shelter, if that's a possibility.
Now, I do know that the animal shelter director that we did hire is supposed to fundraise. So they're supposed to make up some of this money in their fundraising. That's why you have a retail line. We're going to open up a thrift store, which is going to generate some income. He just sent me a message today. They've got a donate button they're going to put on Facebook for people to make donations. So, and then he's supposed to have events just like Lynchburg did, to raise money. He may raffle off different things, or he may have some type of event at a farm. I think there are several things that are in the pipeline. But now, next year's budget, are we going to have a figure to budget for said fundraisers? I don't have a clue what to put in there. So you are looking at $1 million, but I think the plan was when he was interviewed and hired is that he is going to do outreach, he is going to do fundraising. That's part of his job description.
You have a question for me? Well, going to what Joe said, that's one scenario I got in my head, the regional, we need to get with somebody regional, but my first thought, we need to find a nonprofit to take over this thing and us do the animal control part of it. I've been saying that today for a long time. You look at the trend, this ain't gonna stop, this is gonna continue. And what he said, we're never gonna get the general fund balance up. We're playing a shell game. We're savings here, but we turn right around and put it in another area. We're not growing. We're spending, we're pre-spending all our money, and we're never gonna increase. I mean, that's my thought. I've been saying that for a while. This thing's enormous. It's a machine. It's bigger and bigger and bigger. We need to start looking at how we can get a nonprofit, such as Lynchburg does for Lynchburg. I hate to say their name, but we need to get another organization because that doesn't work out. Is that a possibility? That's $300,000 worth of salaries if I'm adding this up correctly right here. And I mean, I don't see it coming down. It's going to continue to go up. It's getting out of hand. I mean, we can only live within our means, and it infuriates a lot of people. I'm telling you that now. You saw that hell I mean, because they feel like, we're not taking care of the deputies, we're not doing this, not doing that, but we're putting all this money in animal control. And that's a sore spot. I mean, all of us know that. That's a reality. I don't know if y'all hear it. I hear it everywhere. And most people love animals. They want to do with animals, but they also see we're putting a lot of funds in this one category, and we're not doing maybe other things they want to do. And a lot of elderly people brought that up to me about they're paying the solid waste fee, and then they said this $1 million figure, and it really upsets them. I mean, not that they don't love animals. We all love animals. I got plenty of them. I love animals. But I think we need to find an end game, and Joe, you had an idea about putting it into a regional. That is an option that's better than this option, in my opinion, but to me, a nonprofit is the way to go. We need to start really trying to find somebody to handle this aspect of it. Let's do animal control again and work with them. Because I ain't saying that's the brightest idea there ever was, but I really think we need to start looking at another avenue myself.
I agree that we need to explore both concepts. But getting back to CSA, and the question Chairman Davis had, what are we going to do? Well, right now, what we're going to do, according to our staff, is we're going to take the money we have saved through CSA and apply it towards this, so instead of going into our unassigned balance. But let's not forget, this is something that this board has been screaming about for 3 or 4 years. The CSA budget, they would come back to us every year in the middle of the budget year. One year it was $660,000 in one pot, above the increase that we'd already given them. So this happened year after year. So let's not get excited and say we're saving a lot. I'm happy about what you're doing, Mr. Hicks. I really, really am, and I think this board is. But CSA had gotten out of hand with the requests that they were coming in here with. We were up to their budget, and then turning around, they were coming back in the middle of the year asking for millions of dollars over a period of time. I think we could go back and look, it's probably well over $1 million, maybe $1.5 million. But their budget escalated, so that was certainly a place that we need to be saving money. It's a shame now that we finally got a handle on it, and we got another leak in the dam, and the leak is over there.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would say that I agree with everything that's been said here, and I certainly hope that staff and our Pet Center committee will look at every option that's available as we go into this budget process. And I think, I think it's a lot of folks out there that probably would contribute. I agree with Mr. Barber, I'm an animal lover too. But I think our community, and in particular those that are passionate about their animals and all, need to realize, as I am one of them, I'm going to have to realize that there could be some philosophical and philosophy changes that have to be made in relationship to animal shelter in order for it to be an item that can be sustained within the county budget. So if they don't want to see problems and changes, then those folks need to help us do better in the retail side and the contribution side if they like it the way it is. So I just think it's important that we look at all of our options, because Mr. Barber's right. You can look at all that top half of that budget, and that's an ongoing expense that is not going to decline.
Mr. Davis, do you have something?
I remember in 2016 when I was looking at this budget as well, the Finance Committee as well as the Animal Shelter and all the stuff before it was even, remanufactured and built. I remember asking that gentleman, I said, when we increase the persona of this particular installation we're putting in, what's it going to do to our animal intake? He said, I said, it's going to increase. He said, it certainly is. And now we're looking at it. So my conclusion is reduction in animal intake. I think we may need to look at that as well. That's my opinion. As I said, Mr. Barber had the right idea, was novel, perfect for allowing to bring in, this nonprofit organization. Did a great, for what she had to deal with. She did an outstanding job for what she had to deal with on several factors, and I appreciate what Ms. McKenna did. Now we're stuck holding the bag, and it seems like we're feeding the alligator. Okay, real simple. That's what I look at in rental property, feeding the alligator. And the citizens are not getting anything out of it. And anyway, I'm really disturbed over this increase, and I knew this was coming. I mean, my question is, I'll go along with Mr. Barber as well as Mr. Blackstock. My thought is there anybody that's out there that we could maybe entertain to come and kind of give us some insight or something else? I know we've already got staff in place, and we're going to give them a chance and all this, and I'm looking forward to that. But the question is, do we need some extra help?
I'll tell you some things we're doing. In fact, I talked to James today, right before this meeting. He is bringing in some outside resources from Richmond, I can't remember if it's Richmond SPCA or from Mesa. they're going to bring some folks down to take a look at our operations and see if there are ways we can save money. He's also going to do some staff training via Richmond. Our count at the animal shelter was about 3 1/4 animals a day the last few months that Lynchburg was there. Today we're at about 200. He has reached out and made some new partnerships to move these animals out to communities that can adopt them. So it's going to, I mean, we all know it's going to be a combination of things that make this get better, but take some assurance that James is on it, and he's doing some creative things, including bringing in some third-party perspective to help us make sure we're doing things well.
I have one more statement to make. I talked to a gentleman who has 4 animals. He was in special forces in Germany, and I'm not going into his whole dialogue, but this guy's an animal trainer, and he's over here. He's been living over here for 20 years, I believe. He's in my district. He works with VIR. He's an engineer. He's got 2 degrees in engineering. Germany paid for those. I don't understand all of that. But I'm saying that to say this. He trains animals, and I asked him, I said, what kind of a setup do you guys have in Germany when it comes to animals? And I know this may not be liked, but this is reality. I said, what do you think about our animal? He said, the United States has got a lot of work it's got to do. I said, well, how does it go in Germany? He said, in Germany, you have to take a class before you own an animal. You have to go to a 2-month training class, how to raise that animal, how to take care of it and all. And he said, and if you have any type of a minor offense against you, misdemeanors, felons, you don't get animals over there. And I thought, now that's phenomenal. So that's the way they keep something. I'm not saying that's necessarily going to go here in America, but I'm almost saying this. With that type of attitude or that thought process, I feel that really what we're dealing with is on the lower end. I think it's going to have to go up to the General Assembly, maybe up to the state as well as up to the feds. I'm just saying we're dealing with it here, but I think really it's going to have to go up the ladder, because I think where we're losing it is, and I'm going to give you an example. I'm finished right here. I just went to a guy's house the other day, invited me over, who does work for me. They got cats running up out of the trailer, and I said, hey, what's going on here? Well, they're just having babies. So I'm just saying, I think we're missing the point of educating our citizens on how to responsibly own animals. So I'm just throwing that out for discussion, or just an added statement.
I think Ms. Barber wanted to say something.
Yeah, I have one quick way to do question. I don't know if it's allowed. Can you put something on a tax bill, a donation? I get a lot of things like Farm Bureau, and they say, would you like to donate Hunters for the Hungry,
right,
Food for the Hungry? Is that allowed on a tax bill? If somebody want to make a contribution? I know we haven't ever did that.
I'm not sure it's allowed on the tax bill, but we can certainly, if the county choose to do so, you can have leaflet inserts. Included with the tax bill for information, for anything like that, where it's a quarter page, third page, whatever, like insert that you want to put in with the bill. Right now, our bills, if you look at the back of them, they're pretty packed with the legalese stuff that we have to put on the bill.
Because I kind of agree with what Bob said. I mean, we were pushed. This board was pushed to do that, and I feel like I don't see the donation money never coming in. Everybody, if it's going to work, they got to get involved and contribute, because it's very expensive. And I mean, at some point we may get to the point like Lynchburg did. I mean, if it's not feasible, it's not feasible. Nobody wants to do that. But
that's right.
I mean, they look down to figures. I mean, we can't sustain this thing, and I mean, we could easily double this in 5 years. Easily. I mean, at the trend we're going. I mean, I'm not saying we will, but I see it in my brain. I mean, we've really got to start planning, or this thing's really going to get out of control.
I know we're looking at the budget, which is, expenses that they're projecting. How about the income? I'm sure it's minimal, but are they bringing in anything on adoption calls?
Well, yeah, they are charging for adoption, and we've recently set up a separate account so that they can collect credit cards at the shelter. Any way you want to pay, we're going to be willing to take that at the shelter. And like I said, just today he asked for some information. Facebook requires that you have something to substantiate adding a donate button. So there will be a donate button on their Facebook page.
Where's your
Has anybody ever contacted our industries? I know when Ringo put that light truck down there, you know, some of those companies made huge donations to help in the community, as one of the corporations that helps with their members of the community.
All right, Kim, you got 5 minutes to try to wrap up this
Real
economic
quick.
development.
The last thing that I wanted to share with you all is that at the last board meeting, Mr. Blackstock asked for an overview of our economic development fund and how much money was located in that fund. We did send out an update in your Friday update, but I wanted to give you some more detail. In your economic development fund, this is the fund that exists to cover expenses directly related to locating businesses in the county. Matt Rowe's budget is not in the economic development fund. He has an operational budget that exists in the general fund. This is just your dry powder money that you have to give for incentives. It also houses your tobacco grants. If we get tobacco money to put in a water or sewer line or anything like that dealing with economic development, it is run through the economic development fund. That being said, just a 30,000-foot view here, we've got available funds at December 31st of $1,418,114. Our current obligations, these are things that Matt has said we're going to have to pay before June 30, is $1,230,770.33. So our unobligated amount remaining is $187,000. He also gave me a list of payouts if certain other not definite things were to come through, and that's another $1,173,640, and all that's listed on this slide here. If those non-definite things were to come through, those things would have to come back before you all for you to review and for you all to decide if you wanted to proceed with those and to provide the funds that are needed to give those incentives. So I just wanted to give you a little more information. I didn't have those payouts at the time I sent the Friday update. Do you have any questions or anything? You can certainly ask me during break time if you need to.
Quickly, any matters from committee members? If not, let's go ahead and adjourn and get ready for this next meeting.